I mentioned how last week this show gave me a mixture of decadence meets Made in Abyss, but I have to say the end of this episode gave me even more Made in Abyss impressions, and that's a great thing. The way this world is opening up and the exploration with the mixture of death flags meets just incredible action, this show continues to sell itself, and I actually see it doing fairly well as the weeks progress, because not only are there familiar elements that anime fans know and love, there also is some pretty bold and original takes on, honestly, a genre you see every season. How many mechas get overlooked? How many even kaiju shows over the past year have been overlooked? But there's something different with this father-daughter duo, especially with how good the production is. Now, I thought it was going to look like a pretty solid show, but I wasn't expecting nearly a 20-minute fight scene that incorporated mostly 3D CGI into one of the most fluid-looking action scenes I've seen this season. Like, holy shit. Now, I know the season just got started, but this is setting a pretty damn high bar. There's a sort of brilliance with how the action does work because they can duplicate the character models, so if you want to have multiple of the same kaijus, it lets itself work pretty naturally. I really hope people continue to give this one a shot because this show is absolutely stunning. I mean, you set up an amazing world last week with basically a giant-ass twist that I didn't see coming, or at least in the way that it happened, and then this episode is just the complete aftermath, and to see how this father-daughter duo really had to rise to the occasion is something I always love about anime. You know, there's usually one character not believing in themselves and then another encouraging. Just this time it happens to be a father-daughter dynamic. So to see her really much feel like a fearful kid despite really wanting to push out and become an adventurer, so to speak, she had to rise to the occasion, and once she did, just the way they incorporated their plans together was really cool. And I mean, they end this kind of like parting scene at the grave and how he tells her that you need to be able to move on and accept those losses. Like, if that's not a death flag, I don't know what is. And last week I mentioned as such, if one of these two characters was going to die, it would have to be the father, because naturally, I don't see how he would continue on adventuring at the loss of his daughter, even if she made him say, like, you know, keep your promise, go adventure. No, it makes more sense that the father would die, and given how episode 1 concluded, father and daughter dynamics dying or getting wounded is something that we should expect. So, to have an episode like this build the confidence of the characters, and despite, at face value, she probably assumes he very much believes in the mission, I think he's fully convinced one of them, if not both of them, have a very real chance of dying at going on what's essentially a suicide mission. But like with the lesson last week, sometimes you just have to roll with the punches. You have to go with what they believe in and just be there for your daughter, so to speak. I really have to say that there's a lot of different reasons that the action was engaging. It was creative. It wasn't just like it was a mecha punching a kaiju and the kaiju throwing or maybe throwing a fireball. It had that type, but there was so much creativity behind it. Like the fact that normally these kaiju shouldn't be able to jump or move too aggressively because of the lines and how they connect to them. So when it does happen, it throws a wrench into the equation. The idea that there is so much technological cool things happening in terms of grappling hooks, the idea of drills and how you can break apart the ground to then have them crumble down into what's normally probably not devastating, but the rocks and the minerals inside, should you throw a flame or some sort of flare on top of that after crumbling it, making it into what's essentially gunpowder, you can blow apart the kaiju in a normally unwinnable situation. And you can definitely tell that the fight scenes in this show are not just going to be brute strength. The kaijus and the monsters, that's probably how they're going to fight. But in terms of this father-daughter duo, they're going to have to think on their feet. I mean, good old Tony, as the bot is named in this episode, as much of like an arsenal and tool belt as it might have, it's not something that can outpunch a giant Godzilla-looking creature, especially when the brother comes a knocking and it's 2v1. So it's cool to see how they're able to, you know, they know when to flee, they know when to throw a punch, but they also know how to use the environment to their advantage. Humans, for as weak as we are, I mean, we're just flesh and blood, right? You know, you poke us in the heart with a knife and there's a good chance we're gonna die. You try doing that to a kaiju, it's probably gonna eat you without much struggle. But the thing that separates humans from other species is that we're very creative. And the fact that creativity was the reason they won, not just because he unlocked his super cannon and blew him apart. No, it actually took a plan, and that plan has me excited for the action. And it was really well animated. And I'm sure there's going to be some people who don't like the visuals, as per any episode, per any anime out there. It's not going to be universally liked. But it really looked smooth. And it's the type of action you can definitely say this wouldn't have worked in any other medium or in any other style, because the way the backgrounds and the character models blend together, it really does seem seamless. Like, the way they move, it doesn't feel janky, it doesn't feel stuttery, it feels perfect for this show. And I mean, entering this anime season, seeing some of the production committee and like who's behind this, I didn't think a show like this would get as much polish as we've seen over these past 2 episodes. And I think because of how the monsters are designed, it really does let itself be able to duplicate those creatures and do some variations, especially in the open wilderness, so to speak, of these caverns, the depths that they're pursuing. So I really think that we'll have a very consistent show. And I think the mixture of the father-daughter dynamic being something that's actually fresh and exciting and not really like anything we've had in some time. The way it has a kind of familiar feel of like a mixture of like a Decadence meets Made in Abyss meets obviously a Sakugan world. There's some familiar but unique ideas of an adventure, and a dangerous adventure at that, with some badass action and some hilarious comedy. I mean, I love how rather than it just simply being jokes, a lot of the humorous moments in the show come from the body reactions. I talked about it in my first impressions last week, but I mean, just in the middle, like anytime you look inside the cockpit of what they're doing and how they're doing it, one of them, sometimes both of them, have a completely dumbfounded face, or they're just clearly going all out, and it really adds a lot of humor to a pretty intense situation, more often than not. And the opening and ending songs, holy shit, took me by surprise. Love the ending song, very, I think, a great way to close a chapter of an episode. But the opening song's visuals did not need to be that energetic and fun, mixed by a bop of an opening. Holy shit, did the music surprise me. And I think when we get into those adventuring scenes, or those really painful scenes potentially, the OST, I think, for this one is going to be a standout of the season, and more reason to just say that this is definitely a dark horse, something people don't see coming, but weeks by weeks, it just kind of builds this momentum that not even a freight train could probably stop. I mean, I really expected no one to watch episode 1, or at the very least, a very small handful, but I think, you know, in itself, it kind of like had a lot of confidence, so enough people kind of took it at face value and said, yeah, this is pretty good. But I think there'll probably be an equal number of skeptics saying, should I really watch episode 2? And to those people, I say, absolutely. This show is incredible. Definitely something that is going to have my excitement every single week. And it's great to see just how good this season has been. It sucked that, you know, for an hour, Crunchyroll just didn't have the right subtitles, so you got some pretty funny scenes. But once that was corrected and I got to sit down and watch Sakugan, I was jumping for joy and, you know, eagerly awaiting episode 3. It's going to be a long wait, but it'll be a good one. Let me know your thoughts if you checked out episode 2 and you're going to be continuing on with this one as the weeks progress. Let me know down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.